up? This is Alex, a professional composer as well as a huge Final Fantasy nerd. Today I want to analyze the full Bombing Mission soundtrack from FF7 Remake, which I went and rewrote entirely by ear from the E3 demonstration, so everyone can enjoy it without gameplay noises and without voiceovers. Anyway, here's why Bombing Mission kicks ass. So let's go. So one thing you notice straight away is like how freaking epic this sounds, and that's obviously because this is Nobuo Uematsu we're talking about, you know? And to think this track is 20 years old is insane. The way it sounds now in modern technology, orchestra and stuff like that, it's like it was always meant to sound this way. And actually, it was. Now, one of the biggest criticism towards the FF7 Remake soundtrack is like, oh man, this is too orchestrated, it sounds too formulaic just because it sounds like film music and stuff. Where are the synthesizers, where are the guitars? Now, first thing I should say is like, there are guitars. Not in this track, but for example, in the boss track, there are guitars. Trust me, I listened to that thousands of times. I couldn't recreate the guitars because I didn't have guitars at the time with me, but there are guitars. But as for the old versions with synthesizers and stuff, what you need to understand as a non-musician is that back in 1997, you could not write soundtracks for PlayStation games using real orchestras or real instruments. What you had to use are called sound phones or MIDI sound phones, which are pretty much a computerized version of an orchestra, which has lots of limitation. It doesn't sound like the real thing. That was the first big limitation that couldn't make the music sound as expressive as it was meant to be. But when you listen to the arrangement of the Distant Worlds version of the FF7 soundtracks and stuff, you really notice how Uematsu envisioned them to be performed by an orchestra all along, because they just translate so well. But anyway, so as an example, the strings here, we have this rhythm there. That's pretty cool. That's amazing. It gives a cinematic vibe straight away and tells you this is a track you love, but we added some new details. And one thing I like is that the strings keep on evolving. So here, for example, a shallow gets introduced, and then here you have the bass. So that's cool. And then you have the freaking, which is amazing. By the way, it sounds awesome because obviously epic melody on French horn that we all know. But mostly, again, the detail is the protagonist here, because if you check out the rest of the brass and the strings, jeez, that sounds insane. It sounds awesome. And then I also added this sort of like detail. That doesn't exist in the original. I'm just a nerd, so I had to add that. And it goes to this. Kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy 12, so I had to add that too, but that's not in the original. Anyway, this ends. So one thing you notice is that in this arrangement, there's some ideas like that are blended in the arrangement a bit differently. Before, this had a bit more space, but now it's like straight after the main melody. Same thing for the crashes here, actually. So if you remember correctly, in the original, it was something like this. Like a tan, 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 ba, 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 ba. It was like after, right? While here, it actually starts, like the melody starts before, and then you have the crashes that play, like in the original, but after. So it's not like the arrangement changed, the structure changed, but actually all the main ideas that we grew to love and we got used to are still there. So that's an example, you know, like that. They had to include that, as well as the percussion is also the same. You know, so like the original. So, you know, it's just more modern. And then there's this passage here. which is freaking cool because this track is full of transitions like that, and I think they added them because this soundtrack is going to be contextual to the way you're playing the game. It's not going to be like a track that plays through as it is, but actually they've wrote it in different states. So as, for example, maybe this part is going to play when you cast a limit break, like something like that. Or when a monster reaches a certain amount of health and enters into phase 2, you have that transition, and then it goes to, so you're gonna hear a lot of this sort of stuff in the FF7 soundtrack, I think, in the remake soundtrack. And then you have this. So one thing I like in this part is how this sort of like thing evolves, because first it plays like this. And it's playing basically on piano, double basses, cellos. Then it goes to violas. And then it goes to violins. So it kind of evolves and goes, as the track goes along. And one thing I like is, again, the detail in the original. There was a lot of copy pasting because that was the only way you could do this. But now that you're gonna add details, you're gonna notice that the track never sounds the same. Even if certain parts are repeated, there's differences in the orchestration which make the track sound fresh the whole thing through. And that involves a lot of effort and definitely not a lot of formulas, but actually a lot of creativity. So good on the composers. So this part used to be played by synthesizers in the original, and now they're like sustained string. Then we have this part. Like, it gets me so freaking hyped. Maybe it's because I'm a freaking nerd for orchestra music. I don't know. This is another transition. And honestly, I added a bit of my own takes here because I couldn't exactly understand what was going on in the original, so I added a few more things. But that's the same thing I told you about before. So you have this. That starts like this, and then it goes to violas. And then I added these layers of first violins and second violins doing this. There's also like the brass doing. I love how the percussion kind of keeps the beat going, even in the moments where the brass is taking breaks. And then you have this. That's another transition, which is pretty interesting. Now, the cool thing about this is that here we had this driving percussion all the time, but here it takes these sort of breaks, And also this part sounds awesome because you have some piatti opening up. Without the piatti, it wouldn't sound as impressive. And then we have that transition there that goes to this. It's just, I don't know. It's awesome. And this is actually reminiscent of Distant Worlds. Actually, in the Distant Worlds version of this track, there is this exact passage. So I'm gonna suppose they use some of the Distant Worlds material in these versions too. One thing you can notice here is how the melody kind of jumps around from instrument to instrument. So for example, French horns here. Now it moves to bass trombone and violins. Trumpets and piccolo. Everything. So it's like, it kind of moves around and it's not predictable, but it's the melody you all know and you love. And then in this part, it kind of goes to unison to everything together. While here, they didn't forget about adding this detail. It's very subtle, but it's there. And then we have this. I just love this part. It sounds like Hans Zimmer or something. And people say this is stuff from Remake because it sounds like film music. Now, I think you should get off the high horse that film music just sounds from Remake. It's not like that. Although, obviously, this definitely sounds like Pirates of the Caribbean. And actually, this is something I probably added myself again. Sorry. Let's move on. You thought the track was over, but it's not. There's 2 more parts. But what I want to show is how it kind of grows, you know? So first it's like it's low notes on French horns and cellos. Then it goes to higher notes on violas. And here it goes to higher notes and it goes to violins. So it's like, in terms of keyboard, it's starting here, then it goes to here, and then it goes to here, and then when it gets here, that's... So it's kind of like growing and growing and getting more and more intense in terms of like orchestral orchestration and stuff. And that's, I don't know, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So this is kind of like an iteration of ba 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 ba. That's kind of the same rhythm that we had in that part, but it's kind of different. Even like the melody kind of starts like that, but then it goes other places, you know. Like you're like, what the hell is going on? You know, this is like sort of like crescendo. So this is like breaking expectation, and this could work very well in the game. There's also some strings playing. So that's pretty cool. And then you, at the end, you have a ba, 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 ba. And then it goes to that part. And that's the end. And once again, if you want to listen to this whole thing without my commentary, it's on my Alex Moukala music channel, which is where I post all my FF7 Remake covers. But anyway, I just wanted to give you a quick showcase. Obviously, I haven't talked about many of the orchestration ideas and stuff because that's like for composers. This video is more for casual listeners who want to understand this music a bit more. But just understand, like, there's a degree of detail here, which is insane. And I highly recommend you to go and check out the Bombing Mission from 97 and then check out this version on my channel. Or at the E3 version, at the E3 video, if you want to listen to it with the voiceovers, because then you'll really notice how much work was done in making this sort of track.